Hello and welcome to the Arbitration Conversation. So in this webisode, we have a friend from the South who is I'm in Colombia and he's in Colombia, but yet we're very far apart. So this is Santiago Dusan, who is a professor at Pontificia Javeriana University, which I know
That's
I
right.
probably said it correctly, but he's in Colombia, the other Colombia, the
Yes.
country in Cali, and he's actually a professor of law and economics. He got his JD in Germany, and he also has his LLM, and he's a specialist in online dispute resolution, which is of course near and dear to my heart. So I'm very happy to have him here. So Santiago, thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you very much, Amy, for the invitation. Actually, I'm very honored and obliged to you. Like I was saying before, this is my first interview ever. So yeah, my feelings are kind of a mixture between excitement, horror, and other stuff.
Well, you're a father, and so maybe it's kind of like that. Having a baby, you're kind of excited, a little bit horrified all at once.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting take on interviews. Yeah, it's like birthing a child. Said yeah.
Kidding around. So let's get into it. So we were talking before we began the webisode, and just kind of starting to talk about, what is ODR in Colombia and what it looks like in your country. We're seeing technology being used in arbitration all throughout the world, of course, with COVID-19, but even before COVID-19. And so maybe you want to speak to what you've seen in your own country with respect to online dispute resolution, especially online arbitration in particular.
Well, thank you for the question, Amy. Actually, both Colombia and Germany, as well as the United States, they provide for a rather welcoming environment, legal environment for the practice of online arbitration. They both allow for digital signatures. They're rather relatively flexible when it comes to relaxation of due process elements. And arbitration is not looked down in Colombia. Actually, it's a very attractive means of dispute resolution. But the thing is more often than not, it is presented as a very nice thing, as an alternative to courts that is with the promise of being swifter, more efficient, less expensive. It supposed less cost than national litigation on national courts. And it's presented as a very helpful means for courts, not as an alternative per se. And actually, from my studies, from my academic research regarding online arbitration, you can see that the original idea behind it was actually a substitute for courts. Courts are, there's a strange relationship between courts and online arbitration, and arbitration in general, because it's supposed to be like this. The more costly, the more difficult it is to use courts, the more arbitration becomes more attractive. So right. It is supposed to be an alternative. In economic terms, it's supposed to be a substantive means for national courts. But especially in Colombia, and this is actually also the case in Germany, when I did my research, it is not the case, because the effectiveness of online arbitration and arbitration in general rests on the enforcement that the national courts are willing to provide for online arbitration. Take it like this: you sign an online contract. There's an online arbitration cost. Supposedly, you're avoiding national courts. You go for arbitration, national courts are excluded. But online arbitration and arbitration in general is only effective as far as national courts are willing and interested and legally able to provide enforcement for online arbitration. So,
do you have a national? Because I know that Colombia is definitely a signatory to the New York Convention on the Enforcement of International Arbitration.
Yes, we
You
are.
also have a national law that requires the enforcement of arbitration agreements and awards within your country.
Yeah, we have a rather new law. It is called the International Arbitration Colombian Law, something like that would be translation. And it allows for, for national and international arbitration, and actually it's rather a welcoming legal institution for online arbitration. It allows for the undertaking of the online arbitration procedures through the internet. But it doesn't present actually online arbitration or arbitration in general as an alternative. It literally says that it is an alternative national courts, but after a deeper review, you can say that arbitration and non-arbitration, especially for consumer disputes, is only as effective as courts are willing to do so. So this thing, and the interesting thing is that, you want to avoid national courts. You want to avoid how expensive courts are, that you have to almost always lawyer up in order to face a dispute. But the thing is that when you face a recalcitrant award debtor, for example, you need to go to the very thing you were interested in avoiding. That is the national court. So in Colombia, and that's also the case in Germany, online arbitration is presented, especially for e-commerce disputes regarding consumers' transactions, as an alternative. But as soon as you allow the courts to be involved, you have a very different scenario. So it's no longer that swift. Sorry, go ahead.
And what is the answer? How can we, because, okay, so I agree. It's been true always in the US and elsewhere and everywhere, that, if somebody's unhappy about the award, then they go to court and challenge the award, which it's very limited review. So in most countries, it's true that review of the award is still pretty limited, but nonetheless, it's a possibility. And if you have to go to court to seek enforcement, but how do we bypass that, right? So how do you create enforcement of ODR, especially for consumers? So how do you create enforcement such that you don't have to go to the courts for enforcement?
Okay, if online arbitration is actually going to be presented as a jurisdictional choice along with national courts, we don't need to think about the same means in order to induce compliance of the award by means of force. Force is just one means, but there are non-legal sanctions based on reputation. So if you want to avoid national courts, you also want to avoid the force monopoly that courts participate of. So there's actually a very interesting quest exploring the use of reputational sanctions. When I say non-legal sanctions, I refer to sanctions that are not used by courts and that are based primarily on reputation.
I love that. Thank you. No, I don't. So in the New Handshake, the book I wrote with Colin Rule, we actually talk about that, the idea of a trust mark. Have you thought about that as kind of a reputational means?
Of course. That's actually, trust marks are a very useful means. They have been traditionally one of the lead examples when it comes to the use of reputational sanctions. Actually, there was a online arbitration provider. They were based on the Czech Republic. I don't know that I don't remember the name of the guy behind it, but I met it in Prague several years ago, and they were actually one of the few online arbitration providers that were basing their operation on trust marks. If you sign you insert into your contract an online arbitration clause with us, you commit to use sort of a blacklist, a list where you track the compliance of the arbitration award and tell us if the arbitration award debtor has complied or not with the final decision. If they have not, we will include his name in a list and just made it public. So other market agents can see in advance whether this guy is trustworthy or not. Of course, the mechanics of the argument are much more technical, and I don't think we have the time to go over them, but that is actually one of the main means to assure compliance. I mean, non-legal sanctions based on reputation through trust marks.
Yeah, that's, well, and let me ask you this. So in Colombia and in South America, have you seen any, because you know, we've seen in the EU, for example, the EU has the ODR regulation, and as part of that, there are what they say are authorized ODR providers for e-commerce in particular. Is there anything like that in South America? Are you seeing any sort of central hub or any main platforms for consumer disputes cross borders within South America? Is there anything like that in development, or have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard any of that, and regretfully, I doubt that there are any functioning right now, because the institution of online arbitration is so novice, and the involvement, the degree of involvement that national courts and the state have on the functioning of arbitration in general, it leaves so less room for development and for, experimentation regarding the ways arbitration is to be produced. So my take on it is no, I haven't seen anything, in such a way or in such shape in Colombia. Not until now.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm of course, positively surprised to see, rather large conversations or congresses talking or beginning to talk about online dispute resolution. But they're actually not talking about it as an alternative to courts, but as a sort of assistance for courts. I mean, they don't want to get into any competition economic competition against courts, but they want just to see online dispute resolution, specifically online arbitration, as a marginal unit of supply for courts. So if this is the case, of course, they will very much behave like judges, and lacking any degree of competition between these new online arbitrators and against national courts, there will be no development of it.
Well,
and actually, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I guess I remain hopeful that, I think back to UNCITRAL Working Group 3, which was looking to create an online dispute resolution mechanism at a global level for e-commerce. And, I was part of that, and I remember feeling hopeful, and I still am hopeful that we could see something like that, especially with the Americas. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Well, that's my take too. And I think the present situation we're going through is going to lead us in that way, whether we like it or not. I mean, I like it. I'm actually very excited about the idea of an online dispute resolution system.
I think you and I should build it. We should just go for it.
You know what? I've been looking for the opportunity to get enrolled in such a project, but I don't know. I think I'm such a new guy in Colombia, despite the fact that I am Colombian. And despite I wrote the dissertation on online arbitration, I haven't talked about it much until this day. I mean, I am going to write a book about it. Luckily will appear at some point in the next 2 years. But I'm actually looking forward to, be a part of the conversation. I think.
You are
thank you very much.
This is international, worldwide, and honestly, and let me just say a special thank you, Santiago, because part of the whole vision for arbitrate.com is new voices, new thoughts, new brilliant people like you to be part of this conversation. So thank you. I really appreciate your taking time with us today.
No, Amy, like I said, thank you very much to you and to Colin for inviting me. I'm very excited. And like I said, very honored. And keep me in the radar because I'm willing to work.
Well, hey, you got it. And I will definitely take you up on that. Hey, have a really good day. From one Columbia, Missouri to your Colombia, the actual country. Great.
Yeah, this was a conversation between Colombians.
Exactly. 100%.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.